Welcome to the Kotak Workshop. Today's video we've got something quite interesting. It's a table that was made in Glasgow in the late 1930s, and the current owner, it was his grandfather that built it, and it was used as a place to shelter during the Blitz, during the bombing of Glasgow in World War II. I did a bit of research and some great stuff at the British War Museum website, saying that if you were lucky enough to have a garden at the time, then the recommendation was you would build a shelter in the garden, an air raid shelter. Or you might shelter in a public place. So for example, in London, lots of people would hide in the underground. But if you didn't have a garden and you were in a place likely to be bombed, then you might have a shelter in your house, which is a solid block protected on all sides that wouldn't survive a direct hit, but certainly if debris or bricks were falling, you could shelter 2 adults and 2 children underneath that. There's another design that was quite popular. That was a solid table, but not protected at the sides. And if you didn't have that, then the advice was, well, hide under the family dining room table. And I'm looking at it now. I finished it tonight. Tomorrow, when it's light, I will take the finished pictures and footage. But a beautiful solid oak table. I wouldn't want too much debris to fall, but better than a hard hat or nothing at all. And I can only imagine what it was like for the owner's grandfather and family to be huddled underneath that during an air raid. But it survived all this time, fortunately, and had a few scuffs and scratches and dings and dents, which we've now restored. And they're moving to a new home, and the brief was to tidy it up to a state where it gets house space. So it's been a real pleasure to work on, and I hope you enjoy the video. Thanks very much. So this table from the 1930s was used in a house that did not have a bomb shelter, and the family were told that if they heard the air raid siren, this is where they had to shelter. So here we have one leaf of the tabletop, and you see this gap here and here. And what has happened is these panels have been put in, but they've been glued in place. And as the table has been in a drier, less humid environment, this panel has shrunk and created this gap on one of the pieces that actually caused the panel to split. And you can see this from these lines here, that I think this scratch was made many years ago, because they would have been parallel, and then at some point this board has shrunk by, looks like about 1/4 of an inch, and that has pulled it away. So what we need to do is take this stile off and make some adjustments so that we don't have these gaps. So I'm going to use a heat gun to loosen the glue and take the stile off. Hopefully it comes off easily. Okay, so we have recreated the tongue for the tongue and groove joint, and then I've taken a block plane and chisel and made this bit shorter so that the cross part is longer at each point, so that if this board did get damp or humid and expand, it's got a little place to go. It would be better if all of this was loose, but I don't want to take the entire piece apart. It's quite a involved process and might actually do more harm than good. But we got this style off, and what we'll do now is glue it and replace here. But I'm only going to put glue here, here, and here, so that this is a free edge, so that it can contract, even if it is stuck at the sides. But I think it's a good compromise, and hopefully it'll leave a neat edge. Now, I am going to use a modern wood glue, which is not heat releasing. Now, you might say, well, you should, because somebody else might need to come and repair this. However, it's only got 1, 2 and 1/3 points of contact. So there's not a huge surface area. So I'm going to go for strength rather than being able to be heat released, although it will only be a smaller area that's glued. Okay, so we'll let that dry. Okay, we need to replace the green felt. So thank you to Kate for her suggestion. I have now got a self-healing mat and a cutting tool, and I'm going to use this felt for all of the replacement parts. All right, there's a bit of roadworks, so I'll probably have to do a voiceover for this part, but I've got some fabric glue and I've cut up pieces of felt to go as a replacement. As I'm sanding this lovely piece of wood, I start to notice some telltales that this has actually been taken apart before, because I didn't split this part, but you can see where there's been a tool when they've been heating it to try and open up. And I think that explains why glue was used for the inside panels. And then when I came to this one here, you can see that there's some filler being used. So in the past, this has been taken apart and then all glued together, which was explaining the splits that we've had. Interesting to do a bit of detective work, but hopefully we've given it enough room to move, and we're soon going to move on to the finishing stage. Okay, we've got the table legs up on the bench and we're ready to start staining. I'm going to go quite dark as it was originally, because you can see there's quite a lot of orientation which brings out different parts of the grain. So the left-hand side and the right-hand side would look different. So we'll keep it as it was and get staining. So this is a medium oak, and the house that it's going to has got wood in it, which I've seen some photographs of, so I think this is going to be a better match. And I'm quite happy that it's sort of a little bit lighter at the top, but I just want to see what it looks like when it's dry. This is probably the most satisfying part of the job. The wood has been sanded and everything's structurally sound, and then just seeing the natural beauty of the grain coming up, and you're getting an idea of what the finished piece is going to look like. Fairly generous amount on the cloth, and then rubbing with the grain. It's fairly forgiving in terms of overlap. It sort of has the colour it's going to go, and lots of extra layers don't make a huge difference with the oil base. Now this wood has really soaked up the oil. It's drying pretty quickly. I think that's going to be lovely. Now this mark I sanded quite a bit, but I decided to stop because it is really tough to sand. It's very hard oak, but also I didn't want the finished piece to be completely sterile, so the owner will possibly know what caused that. It looks like a burn or something hot that was put down, so it's part of the history of the piece, and when it's finished, as in the hard wax is on top, it'll still be visible, but I don't think the right thing to do would be to obliterate it or get rid of it completely. So a piece of the history left in, and still a little bit more stain to put on, and then putting it back together. Beautiful. So this is coming on. Got the felt in there. Got the felt on here. Got a layer of hard wax oil on the inside. I've just got the other side to do, and we'll let this dry for a bit.